Hello, everyone. I hope you're having a really great week so far and happy Friday. And I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Laura, and I'm a friend of your teacher's. And she asked me to come on here and talk to you about two things. First of all, the first one is that I am a volunteer for NASA, the Space Administration. And so part of my job as a volunteer is to learn about different missions and things that are going on in outer space and different projects they're doing, and then share them with people. So that is part of why I'm here to talk to you today. And then also, she asked me to talk a little bit about my career as a news reporter and a little bit about how I prepared for my career in high school and get you guys all ready to get into high school. So just wanted to talk about those things. So first of all, first thing we're going to do is talk about the Mars program. So I'm not sure if you guys are very familiar with Mars, but it is another planet. It's next to Earth. And we currently have a few different cars, basically rovers, that are exploring the surface of Mars, and they're looking for signs of water, signs of microscopic life, different things to tell us about the history of the red planet. And so I had an opportunity to be on a video call talking with one of the people that actually drives the rover that's on the planet Mars. So I talked to her and got to ask her a couple questions, and then other people asked her a whole bunch of different questions. It's really interesting how she can drive a car that's millions of miles away. So I'm going to share my screen and show you what she looks like, and then I'll give you a little background on the Mars rover. The current one that they're working on right now, that she's working on, is called Curiosity. So going to share the screen here, and here we go. All right. So this is the NASA website. I encourage you guys, with your parents or your teacher, to go out to nasa.gov. Mars.nasa.gov is where there's a whole ton of information on Mars missions. So basically, what you're seeing right now is the Mars Curiosity rover. This is a selfie that the rover actually took on the surface of Mars using different cameras that it has. So this is what the rover looks like right now as it's sitting on Mars, and this is what the surface of Mars looks like. Before we had sent cameras, we had never been able to have images like this, and looking at these different rock landscapes and what's under the surface, what's here, are there fossils, was there life there, what kind of biology is happening under the surface of Mars. So that is what the rover is set to find out. So it's really cool. What they do is the folks at NASA, at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in California, they drive the rover from California, and they send it commands, and then the rover does what they tell it to do. And it's anything from brushing off. It has a little brush on it, so it brushes off dust, and then it somehow is able to collect that and analyze a lot of things, and it can tell us things, because we may never get this rover back. I mean, we may never be able to actually hold this dust and these rocks in our hands ourselves. So what we send to other planets is incredibly important for it to be able to do a lot of different things. So this is the Mars Curiosity rover, and these are some of the images that it's taken. So these are different panoramas of the surface. These are pictures it's taken of itself, and there's different, you can see different mountains on Mars. This one says Mount Sharp, self-portrait of NASA's Curiosity Mars rover, shows it on these particular ridges. It's been investigating, and there's a start of a clay-rich slope that scientists are going to use the rover to start to see. So it's so cool. And the lady who is one of the drivers is this lady, Carrie Bean, and she's the one who I got to speak with on the phone. So she has minors, she has a bachelor's degree in meteorology, double minors in math and earth science, and then she has a master's degree in atmospheric science. So one of the things that she talked about was that she was really interested in weather, and she didn't know as a high school student if she wanted to go into meteorology, like to be a TV meteorologist, or what she wanted to do with that passion. And so she decided, she got into, when she was in college, she got invited to be a part of something that NASA was doing because she was wearing a NASA t-shirt and one of the teachers worked for them. So she was able to go in as an undergraduate college student and learn all about um, the NASA program that was going on. So this is her. And another thing she talked about quite a bit is that she's really into Star Wars. And you can see she's wearing her R2D2 shirt. She actually built her own R2D2, like a full scale, actual functioning model, like a robot that she programs. So if you are interested in that at all, you know, you need to get into coding, learn robotics, and there's loads of programs to do that, especially when you get into high school. So that was one of the things that she likes to do. And then she does cosplay and dresses up as different like Star Wars characters at the different Comic Cons and things like that. So that's a big passion of hers, along with working for NASA, which is a huge deal to have that as your actual job. I mean, I feel lucky to be a volunteer, and I had to go through a big selection process to become a volunteer, but to be able to work there is super cool. So this is Carrie, and this is her working on some of the pieces that go into the Mars rover. And you see how she's all decked out in her clothes. That's because you can't get any microscopic dust on any of these parts because it's so scientifically accurate. The math to do all these things, to put these robots together, is so precise that you have to be in basically surgical wear. So these are the different missions she's worked on. She's obviously a huge deal at NASA. Mars rovers, Mars lander, that worked on the Hubble Space Telescope, which gets us amazing pictures of the Earth and outer space, science laboratory. And then she's also working on Mars 2020, which is another rover that's going up this summer. So I know I'm going to be watching really closely in making sure that they get the project off and that they send the rover. And it takes months once they send the rover in a rocket to get to Mars, and then it has to land itself. And that one actually is going to have a drone on it, so it'll be able to fly around. So right now they're figuring out who's going to be flying that drone from Earth that's flying on Mars. I mean, I just think that's so cool. So I'm going to look at some of my notes. We'll do another picture of Curiosity Hover while I look at some of my notes. So basically, to drive the rover, you don't use a steering wheel. You don't even use a joystick like you do with like a video game. You use computer code, and NASA has its own proprietary code that they use, so no one else can use it. So she and her team tell rover commands, like they'll say move forward 1 meter, or they'll say, hey rover, go to that hill. And then they will and then the rover does that. So it takes a while, 17 minutes, to get a command from the Earth to Mars. And so what they usually do is they'll plan like 1 to 3 days at a time what the rover is going to be doing, where it's going to be going, whether it's going to be taking pictures or driving around or looking at dust samples. And then they send all those commands to the rover at night while the rover is resting and sort of restoring its batteries. And then the Mars rover wakes up in the morning and has all these new commands from Earth, and then it goes and does those things. And so they watch that, and then the rover sends the data back. And then after every mission, the rover takes a selfie like this one. So that's pretty cool. And she said that she got to name a rock that's on Mars. That's pretty cool. She talked about the different chemicals that are in the atmosphere on Mars. And then the rover that's launching this year is going to be called Perseverance. The one that they're currently working on is called Curiosity. And she said that it used to snow on Mars, and they learned that through the rover because they found craters that were formed by ancient rivers and lakes. So I mean, barely ever snows in Phoenix. But can you imagine it being like way more dry? And then the fact that it used to snow, we learned that through a robot. And they have big meetings where they decide where the rover goes because the rover has only so much power, and they want to make sure that they're using the resources wisely. And it travels 20 to 30 meters a day on average. And one of the things that they're working on with the rover that's going up this year, Perseverance, is that they're getting narrower wheels, and they have a different set of lines on the wheels to reduce the impact to the planet. Because one of the things that they want to do is make sure that we don't disturb Mars as much, as we disturb it as little as possible to be able to examine it, but not make a huge impact on it where there's tracks everywhere. And we just want to have conservation in mind and be responsible. And then they test out the rovers they make a fake Mars area basically in California, and they test out the rover. They test out the tires and make sure that it's going to perform, because once they send it into space, they can't get it back. So years and millions of dollars go into making these. And once they send them into space, they literally have to be perfect. They have to be perfect, and they have to work for many years, all the way up there where no one can go to Mars. So you can't get a technician there to fix it or anything. So it's a lot of planning, a lot of math, and a lot of engineering, and then a lot of hoping for the best. So they're not just working on solar, they have batteries on it as well. And I asked her a question for you guys. I said, what should kids do if they're interested in getting into something like driving the Mars rover? And she said, do internships, like when you get into high school and college. Internships at places that you think are really interesting is important. And then there's a lot of online resources for learning as well. So you could spend days and days going through the NASA website, getting the official information, looking at the real pictures from Mars that are all available to you. You can print them off. You could share them, anything. It's really cool. So that was the sum of my interview with Carrie Bean, the driver of the Mars rover. And if you have any other questions about that, again, mars.nasa.gov, and your teacher can talk you through that. And then also she can email me questions if you have any other questions that I can answer for you. So second, do you like my notebook, by the way? Second is the second point of this. I'm going to go back to my video here. And we're still recording. Perfect. So I wanted to talk to you guys about my job as a news reporter, when I was a news reporter and an anchor. So I went to ASU, got degrees in journalism and communication. And before that, I did the newspaper at Barry Goldwater High School, which is where your teacher and I went to high school together. So doing newspaper was really important because it taught me a lot of the basics of journalism, and it was in an environment where it was, you're supposed to learn. You weren't a working professional yet. So it was okay to make mistakes. It was okay to get corrected and do better next time. And then also, it's really important to start building a portfolio of work. So when you want to do something, the best advice I have for you is to just start. The starting is often the hardest thing to do. So if you want to write stories or you want to be on TV, I mean, get a camera out and practice and write stories and then have people read them and get some feedback. And just don't get discouraged because a lot of it is incredibly subjective. There's a lot of rules you have to follow, writing, grammar, different things like that. But then at the end of the day, writing, TV is a creative medium. So you get to be creative. So that's what I did in high school. I did newspaper, focused on writing, reading, read the newspaper, read news articles, and then take classes if you can. And then I picked my majors and went to ASU, which is a fantastic school. This is my master's degree from ASU, and I got in business later on when I went back and did a business degree. As far as journalism goes, I mean, it was just such a good program. A little shout out to ASU. And the Cronkite School is really awesome. So if you are at all considering that, I would highly suggest that. Also, there are a lot of people that work, if you want to live in Phoenix. I don't currently live in Phoenix. I live in Indianapolis, Indiana, which is an amazing place. And it rains a lot and there are trees. And I love living here, but I did love growing up in Phoenix. And I know where you guys are at. I watched all the TV stations. And then when I was in college, I did internships through ASU, Channel 3 and Channel 15. And got to meet all the news anchors there and all the reporters, go out on stories with them. And then I created a portfolio from all those times that I went out with the news reporters. And then I ended up working at TV stations in Montana, Missouri, and Indiana. So that's another thing. And you move around a lot. And then Indiana, I love because, again, it rained. There are lots of green trees. And it was a very different experience than growing up in the desert. So I wanted something a little different. And so here I am. And being on TV was a ton of fun. You got a lot of people coming up and talking to you. People recognize you at the grocery store. It's a really cool job. But there were a lot of weird hours. Like if you think about it, like the news is on when people are at home. So if you're working on the news, you are not at home when other people are home. So I couldn't really ever eat dinner at home. I worked like late at night, or I worked really early in the morning, or I had to go into work at like 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning and be on the morning show. So those times were definitely fun, but they were really challenging as far as sleeping and having like dinner with friends or family or anything like that. And then also moving far away from my family in Phoenix was really hard too. So just a lot of things to consider. And I know that's a big topic for you guys. But I loved going out and shooting video and sitting behind the anchor desk and reading the news and interviewing people on TV, we would get different access to the concerts and things that we could go and do video of different cool things that were going on. And your teacher sent me some questions to ask me a few questions to answer for you guys. And that was kind of overview of my experience and preparation was kind of one of them. And another was the favorite person or story I've ever done. And one of my favorite things is, I don't know if you've ever heard of the Honor Flight, but it's an incredibly cool program that flies World War II veterans to Washington, D.C. to see the memorials that were built in their honor. If you guys don't know about Honor Flight, I encourage you to learn about World War II veterans. The Greatest Generation They're like my grandparents and probably your great grandparents, and they're amazing people with amazing stories that they get to go. They don't get to go travel a lot because they're quite elderly, and it's incredibly difficult often to travel when you're that age. And so this is a program that gets them there to see these their own memorial. So I was able, when I was in Montana, to go with a whole honor flight of veterans, like 100 World War II veterans, to Washington, D.C., and we were escorted around in a police escort on buses, and we got to see the memorials. That was an amazing experience. And if you don't know a lot about Washington, D.C., again, that's a cool thing to learn about, and maybe your teacher can help you learn about that a little bit more. That was one of my favorite things. And then a more recent example of a cool thing is that I was a reporter during the last presidential election. So I was covering a lot of stories about that. And when political candidates would come to Indianapolis, we'd get to go maybe speak with them. So I actually got to interview Bernie Sanders twice, one-on-one, just myself and microphone and him, and ask him whatever questions as an active running like political candidate for president. And that was next level cool. I mean, we had to get security checked by the Secret Service, and they had, handlers there where they were making sure he was only had 4 minutes with us, and then 4 minutes with the next TV station, and then he had to go give a speech, and where we were going to be. And it was just, that was a really cool experience to interview an active presidential candidate, mid-race, while he very much was campaigning and had a lot of a lot of public attention. So that was really cool. A lot of times in TV, you'll interview people after the fact, but to interview someone that was currently running for president was really cool. So I believe those are all my questions, and I just wanted to say thank you for your time. I hope you guys are hanging in there. I know it's weird right now, but things will go back to normal soon, and you'll get to see your teacher in person again, not for too long, I'm sure. And then for now, enjoy all the videos, and keep doing your schoolwork, and keep your grades up, because getting into high school, college, is the first step toward doing anything about Mars, doing anything about reporting and TV. So that's what I would encourage you to do. And I hope you have a great day. And send me any questions through your teacher if you want to ask me any more questions. Bye.